Hey everybody.
Hi Internet.
Hope everybody's doing well.
Yeah.
Welcome back. This video is going to be about statuses.
But yeah, let's talk statuses. What is a status? So everything about statuses.
So right off the bat, something to definitely take in consideration with this is this game does not have a hit point system.
No, and we come from a D&D background or a more crunchy system, more traditional system kind of background. So missing that and having it be statuses instead has definitely been an adjustment period for us.
But the way this game handles I'm going to call it the other HP, because
Right.
statuses basically stack against you. Once you reach a certain threshold, your character's essentially dead or transformed or something like that.
Yeah.
But let's get into it.
Okay, so statuses reflect temporary conditions of all kinds that affect your character. Everything from physical conditions, social conditions,
Psychological
conditions, supernatural conditions, even.
Spooky.
Ooh.
You've been phantasmified.
Ooh. Just some examples. Physical conditions are everything from bruises and scrapes to broken bones and gunshot wounds and that kind of thing. Psychological conditions are fear, confidence, depression, cheerfulness, everything like that. Social is you're the child's favorite, or you were rejected, or you're humiliated, or you're the center of attention.
And keep in mind too, so far these have been kind of like negative statuses. You can have positives on this.
Oh,
where
yeah.
you can be like, hey, you did good, so this is going to be a buff to your psyche, right?
Sure. You could even go so far as to say, hey, that for whatever reason, coffee affects you differently. So you drank some coffee, now you're jacked.
Bro, Starbucks is a mythos.
Right. Supernatural or mystical, you're cursed, you're under a spell, you're guarded by an angel, you have lion strength, something
That's
along
cool.
those lines. And then combat situations that it gives examples of are you're in cover, you're cornered, you're in a good sniping position, you have a blocked escape path, something like that.
Whenever you have statuses applied to you, or you're applying them to others because it doesn't just apply to you, it's going to affect the way you roll. So when you start to accrue statuses, and we're about to get into that, these statuses are going to either give you a bonus to your rolls, or they're going to give you a negative to your roll.
Or depending on how the MC rules it, if it's not something applicable to the tag you're using or that role, it just doesn't affect it.
Exactly.
So, statuses are in different tiers. Everything from a 0, which is no effect, to a 6, which is death or permanent transformation. From the book, 1 is a mild status, 2 is a minor, 3 is a major, 4 is a dramatic status, 5 is you're incapacitated or your character's out, and then 6 is the permanent change.
Or death.
Or death. Death is a permanent change.
But you can come back and D&D.
But you come back
D&D,
different.
But you come back changed.
Yeah. Just turn the page here because we have notes.
Yeah.
So we're just gonna. That one's
Still
gone.
that back there?
Yeah, so the book says at tier 5 you are labeled as out. The status becomes so damaging or intense that the character or object to whom it is attached becomes somehow incapacitated. Character cannot take actions for which the status would be helpful or detrimental until the status is removed.
So, for example, after you're taking stack on stack on stack, maybe you've gone from the point to having like a sprained ankle to a shattered leg or something.
Yeah,
like
your
that.
leg's shot completely. It's at a 5 status, and just that one leg for whatever reason.
You can still, depending on the certain situations, it doesn't take your character out of play. For example, just kind of going right back to the leg situation. You might not be able to move quickly, but that's not to say you can't throw your leg up when you're typing on a computer.
Right,
It
you
doesn't
can still
remove
do
you
the
from
research
game.
at the office, or you can still help out in other ways, or if you're a sniper, you're already in position, you don't need the leg, you just lay there and shoot. Book says for tier 6 statuses, it's dead or might as well be. At tier 6, the player loses control over their character and turns it over to the MC. Essentially your character becomes an NPC at that point, and the MC decides what happens to it.
You think that there'd be a way that, I guess this would really just depend on the table. Like you come through this dramatic transformation, right? And then let's say that it transforms you. I think depending on how you're going and maybe what you've done with your character, the conversations you've had with your MC, that you can still be in game, but maybe you could be like this ethereal figure or something.
Sure.
Like that.
I think, something like that would be cool.
Yeah.
The MC says, hey, yeah, cool, you hit
Dude,
6.
and then you become somebody's mythos.
Right. Okay, cool. Yeah, you're 6. Cool. Okay, your character's dead. You come back as a ghost. Keep playing that character, but now you're a ghost.
That's so rad.
People, unawoken people can't see. But, I mean, that's something like that where you come back as a ghost and you're still part of the group, but you're not part of the group. As far
you could
as
definitely be an influence.
Really cool.
You can influence people. You could give statuses for sure.
Absolutely.
That'd be kind of neat.
On top of that, tier 5, tier 6 statuses also can apply to anything. So it can apply to your relic item. It can apply to your mundane item. It can apply to your vehicle. It can apply to literally anything. When it hits 5,
it can be like repaired and fixed.
Right. It can be repaired and fixed. When it hits 5, you can't take actions or use it anymore. It's essentially the incapacitated the same way that you would be with those tags. You can't use it. If it hits 6, it's just destroyed.
Yeah, that's actually a really good way to put it. And this is going to be a really good segue into talking about the moves that will allow you to kind of balance some of that stuff off. So, like, for example, if you're changing the game, right, and you get to, and you want to choose the option to remove some status, if you were to apply it to that thing that is a tier 5, you can drop back
it
to
back
where it would
down.
be used
Absolutely,
again.
absolutely. And the different ways to give statuses that are most common in the game. Convince, hit with all you got, go toe to toe, change the game.
Yeah, and you're going to be able to, in certain scenarios, depending on what statuses you've accrued as a player, you might be in a situation to where you have 2 negative statuses, for example, that can affect you. The book kind of uses a really good one where maybe your character at this point has like a -2 on, how did they put it? You're not sneaky, you're suspicious.
Yeah, you fumbled a couple of rolls and now the cops are suspicious of you.
Exactly, that's the word I was looking for. And you may also have an idea like when you're doing that. So with suspicious, that would basically go against your sneaking around.
Yes.
But you could also argue, for the example, maybe you have a hurt leg that you've taken from a fight. Now, depending on which tier is going to be higher, you're always going to take the higher tier.
Right.
You're not going to add them together.
And the reason for that, there are a few different things, and this gets into stacking statuses. There's a 3-point system for stacking statuses. They do not stack unless they are of the same theme or the same type. So your physical won't stack with
same
your
spectrum.
Yes. Your physical won't stack with your psychological. Your psychological won't stack with your social, and so on. If they are of the same one, the higher one overrides. So if you're at a 2 and if an enemy's at a 2 and they're 2 bruised or whatever, and another party member comes over and says, "Hey, I'm going to hit him with my sword," and it's a status of 3. Cool, the 3 overrides the 2. If they are the same,
This
then
is
it goes
when they add together.
Yes.
Like,
So then you come back and say, "Hey, I can do a 3 as well. I'm going to put another 3 on it." Those 3s combined together, and now it makes it a 4.
no, it goes to 4. Because the way this game handles the progress is you have what they call pips.
Yes.
And if you're, example, if you're at a tier 3 status, and let's say we're going back with that bruised idea. You've been bruised, or you're some kind of physical damage that has hurt you, and somebody kind of comes along and chips away at you, that's going to go on the pip. And you're going to have to take essentially 3 more of those before you can move into tier 4.
Right.
Unless somebody hits you with that tier 3, and then it goes
4.
exactly.
Right.
Basically, it has to be higher or equal to.
Yes. If it's tied, it bumps it up 1. If it's higher, it just automatically ramps it up to whatever the highest one is. And if it's lower, it just adds to the pip. Other things about statuses: the duration of statuses.
Yep. You can have temporary or you can have permanent.
Most are temporary.
Most will be temporary because those are going to be something that are going to kind of come up in like the heat of the moment during like a combat situation, or maybe you have some stress that's been put on you where you're taking like a -1 to stress or something like that.
I would say most all below 3 are going to be temporary. I would say once you get to 3, it's going to be about half and half are temporary, and then beyond 3 at 4, once you hit 4, it's going to be a lot of those are going to be not necessarily permanent, but long lasting.
Yeah.
5 and 6 are going to be more permanent or until removed.
You can remove some of these statuses when you're starting to use moves like change the game, but there are some caveats that you're going to need to be aware of for these to work.
Right. And the easiest ways to get these, the short-term temporary ones are convince, investigate. They're your, "Hey, I convinced you, so you have a agreeable 1 now." And as soon as you're done talking to that person, that status is essentially just gone.
It can be, depending on how intense the situation is, when you have these statuses moving to the permanent side,
Right.
where it may have some lasting effect on your psyche, you can dial those statuses back with change the game, and they will basically start rolling backwards from 3 to 2.
Right. And once it hits 6, it's considered permanent, and at that point it's just, here's my stuff to the MC. And the last point in the book that they make a big point of is most of the time a status does not apply to the move trying to reduce it. So say you have a frightened 2,
Right.
and you're trying to amp yourself up, and you're trying to steel your nerves and push through and overcome
That's right.
that.
It's not going to affect you trying to shake it off.
Right. So you say, okay, cool. I'm going to try to change the game to shake this off.
Or face the danger.
Face the danger if it's incoming damage.
Exactly.
Yes.
Psychological.
So that fear that you already have is not going to limit you from trying to remove that fear. There are some caveats to this, so like if there's a magical aura in the area or something that's permeating the area that is a constant effect, then that will also apply. But for the most part, statuses don't interfere with you removing that status.
Right. Another thing that it talks about is like, for example, say like you're really, really hurt and you're like a -3, and you as a player don't have the ability to kind of go in and mend your own wound.
Right.
You might need to go to a hospital, to the emergency
Right.
room in game, to go ahead and get that reduction as well.
Yeah. I think the big thing for this game for the players is these are my tags, and extrapolating from those tags, these are the statuses I'm capable of.
I think that's actually a really, really big point. The tags that you're using to try to shake off, face the danger, or whatever you want to call it, need to really be applicable to trying to remove that status.
Right. MCs have it a little bit worse. You also, on top of that, whenever you make the dangers and everything, you also have to figure out, well, what's the dangerous threshold? Because for MCs, something could take 3 and be incapacitated, like a status of 3 and be incapacitated in that word spectrum. Thank you. In that spectrum. Something else could require a 6 or a 2 or a 1, and it just depends on how you build those dangers.
You can be in certain scenarios as a player that you might not actually know how to affect this danger.
You could have a fire guy and an ice guy in the same combat, and it's, well, I do this, and they don't overlap. Or you could have a mental person who does everything psychologically, and you could have somebody who's just a brute and does everything physically. And how do they interact, and how do we do this as a team, and that kind of thing. And the combat aspect of it can get tricky.
If it does come down to that, because I've been in that situation, ask for an investigate check so you can try to kind of figure out why it's not working, because that's actually in the book.
But for now, that was everything we have on statuses, and I think that wraps up the majority of the introducing
City of Mist
101 to new players. Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining us and watching this series of videos. We've got another game lined up, and we're going to be talking about that very soon. Until then, stay awesome, be excellent, and love each other. Peace.
We'll see you.